So today we're going to start, and I'm going to do just a little bit of an overview on what we see are the differences between financial coaching, financial planning, financial counseling, and financial education, understanding that particularly in the one-on-one service areas, there's a lot of overlap, but we're going to do our best to try to distinguish those for you. And then I'm going to give you some more information about coaching itself, sort of a financial coaching 101. And then I'm going to pass it over to my colleague at EARN, Saul Gonzalez, who's going to do actually a coaching demonstration for you all. So we'll be looking for a brave client out there. So you can be thinking about that if you want to get coached around something with Saul. It's a great experience. We'll be asking for a volunteer in a little bit here. And then we're going to talk about our organizational experiences, so sort of the programs that we run at EARN and at Single Stop and at Mission SF, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions and feedback at the end. All right. So, financial coaching, financial counseling, financial planning, financial education. I put financial coaching above this because I think you can infuse coaching techniques and fundamentals into these other areas. And I also, you all should have a handout where we break out some kind of key characteristics under each of these disciplines. Financial counseling is generally event-oriented. So in the event may be based on the services that your organization provides or the community that you're serving. So an event like someone needing credit repair or someone looking for a budget, opening a bank account, purchasing a home, et cetera. There's usually an event that facilitates a financial counseling session. They're generally shorter-term engagements, so you might have a one-time financial counseling engagement, or you might work with someone over a period of 1 to 3 months, depending on what it is, what the goal or the issue that you're working with the client on. Generally, a counseling engagement is going to involve working towards a goal, as we said, like home ownership, or working on an issue like credit repair. And a counselor often provides direct advice or a specific strategy for a client. And many times, in many of our agencies, we might consider the client in crisis or in need when they go to a counselor. Not always, and as you'll see, there's lots of gray area in these definitions. Financial planning is technical. It's technical advice oriented. It's generally short term unless financial planner is offering asset management services, in which case they might have a long-term relationship with a client. It's a professional client relationship, and there are generally 6 sort of key areas of financial planning. These include cash flow and budgeting, tax planning, investments, benefits and retirement planning, estate planning, and risk management or insurance. And to engage a financial planner, usually a client is somewhat stable and they're working on longer-term goals, tax planning, retirement planning, et cetera, in working with a planner. And when we are talking about financial planning, we're generally talking about financial planners who are certified financial planners or CFP certificates. Financial coaching is different in that it's very process-oriented. Often a coaching engagement will be longer term, and that's because it's really the sort of purpose of financial coaching is to facilitate behavior change among the client. So, we generally think of successful coaching engagements as lasting, anywhere from 3 to 18 months. A coach supports behavior change on the part of the client as they're working towards reaching goals and can help clients who feel stuck kind of move beyond where they're going and get sort of forward movement to where they want to be. Generally, we think of a coach as empowering, as supporting, as facilitating, helping a client remain accountable, and making appropriate referrals as needed as it comes up in the coach-client engagement. And a counselor would do a lot of these things too, so this is not necessarily an either-or, but these are some sort of ways to think about differentiating these different services. And then financial education, as we all know, is a group setting where financial content, a series of financial content can be covered in a group setting by an educator. And you can also infuse coaching into a group setting as well in certain ways. Okay, some important things to think about. These services can complement each other, and they can be provided by the same person. So I might be a coach and a counselor, or a planner and a coach if I'm qualified. So there may be an instance where I'm working with a client on a credit repair issue, and I am giving them specific advice on, how to, how to pull a credit report, or how to deal with something on my credit report that doesn't seem accurate. So I'm advising them, and maybe I'm also coaching around some of the behaviors that have resulted in the client's credit concerns. So I'm coaching around things like late payments and how to help someone get back on track so that they're not making late payments and that kind of thing. Again, elements of coaching can be brought into planning and counseling and education. And the choice of service of how to work with the client may often depend on what the client needs and their situation. So a client who's really in crisis might need, might really want to work with a counselor at that time. A client who has an insurance issue might need to work with a planner. A client who has these longer-term visions and longer-term goals and really needs some support around behavior change might work really well with a coach. Okay, so we wanted to try to put this in the context of our work as financial coaches or counselors. And so if you take the example of a budgeting exercise, which probably many of us have done with clients, a planner would analyze the cash flow for the client. So they're going to take information from the client and spit back reports that shows them how they're spending their money. And they're going to do that for the client. And they may make specific recommendations, and they may monitor a budget for the client. And you would hear a planner saying things like, here's where your money's going. If you reduce your expenses in this area, you may be able to save more towards your retirement and put more in your retirement accounts, and this is what that's going to look like over time. Those are the kinds of things that you might hear a planner saying. A counselor might analyze a cash flow or a budget with a client or for a client in different settings, and they may also make specific recommendations within the context of their background and qualifications. So you might hear a counselor say things like, are these areas where you want to reduce expenses? Where are the areas where you might reduce expenses? Or if you save a certain amount of money, this is what this is going to look like over time. And this is how long it will take you to reach your goal. An educator is often, talking about the importance of budgeting and, why having a spending plan is important, giving different budgeting tools for people to try out, and then, assigning homework. So you can go and go home and work on your budget and recommending that. And you might hear an educator say things like, here's different ways you can track your expenses. Budgeting helps you know where you want to go, or where you are, helps you understand where you are so that you can get to where you want to go. And a coach, when we in our coaching program, when we work with people around budget, it's usually based on the client's suggestion. So we're working on something that the client wants to do, whatever their goal is, and they come up with the idea that they think that they really need a budget. And usually the conversation about expenses and about income is based in the client's their value system. So you'd hear a coach ask questions like, what's important to you about this expense? How might this look differently for you in your future? So a lot of visioning and sort of basing the conversation around the client's vision and around the client's values. So now I'm just going to talk just briefly about some of the benefits of coaching as we see them, and then we'll let you guys see this in action. So why coaching? Because coaching is really rooted in behavior change. That's what coaching is about. It's about helping people change behaviors to get where they want to go. It's client-directed. So the agenda is really driven by the client. It's a partnership between coach and client. And therefore, we've found inherently empowering to the client. And that clients, once they're hooked, are really much more likely to engage over the long term with a coach. It's also a powerful approach for the service provider and can be really sort of freeing for someone working one-on-one with clients. Once they realize that in a coaching model, they're not there to fix the problem, they're there to coach the client. And that we've seen that time and time again as a really sort of powerful shift and mind shift for the service provider. There are 4 key cornerstones to coaching. The first is that, your client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. That they know what they need to do. They're the sort of expert in their own lives, right? And you're there as the coach to really, help bring out what they already know and help them move forward. That the agenda comes from the client. That the client has the answers. And when they don't, and that's okay, and it's time for you maybe to put on a counseling hat, that you always ask permission. So if someone says, I just don't know how to handle this issue with my credit, for example, you might say, okay, well, I have a few suggestions. Would it be okay with you if I share those? So it's really still that the client is kind of driving the conversation and keeping control with the client. The coach really dances in the moment, and this we see time and time again, especially in an agency setting or an organization setting where your organization has specific goals, and you might have things that your funders want you to evaluate, and so you have this kind of organizational agenda, and you still want your client to control the agenda. So it's this sort of really fine dance where you understand the big picture as the coach, understand the context for the client, and help redirect them to financial themes when they're going off track. And that's a really fine dance, and it's something that takes a lot of practice. And that coactive coaching really addresses the client's whole life. So again, we're looking at someone's financial life within the context of their whole life, and understanding that it's all sort of woven together, and everything affects everything, we like to say. Okay. So the role of the coach, I've touched on some of these already, but our coaches are helping clients to identify their specific financial goals and life goals, helping them clarify why these goals are important, how do these goals fit in with their vision and what their values, and what will it mean to them to reach these goals. Supporting folks as they work toward financial goals. And I'm also noticing that lots of folks are writing. I'm happy to send a copy of the presentation out so that you can have this. Helping clients stay motivated, helping clients stay accountable. So the accountability piece in coaching is really important. Serving as a sounding board. So as a coach, you're often just sort of rephrasing and reframing what a client is telling you. And when they hear it in that different way, it can be very powerful, and it can help them, move forward. Providing resources and referrals, and helping clients take action steps to meet their goals. I wanted to just touch a little bit on what a coaching process might look like, because you'll see this, and then just ask you to look for this when you watch the demo, and then we're actually going to give you all an opportunity to do a little coaching too. So it's important in a coach and client relationship. There's always going to be a period at the beginning where the relationship is designed, and the coach and client come together in agreement, understanding what each other's roles and responsibilities are, and understanding what each other needs from one another, what they can and can't do. Then there's usually an exploration phase. Where the coach is really exploring with the client and figuring out what it is that the client wants to get out of wants to work with the coach on, and kind of exploring that. So I pulled out some skills that really come into play here on the part of the coach. Active listening, intuition, so using intuition to really not only hear what someone's saying, but see what their body language is telling you. Powerful questions and curiosity. So really working with a client from a point of curiosity, as opposed to a position of having an opinion. And then this goal setting, vision, and values is really critical to coaching. And some skills that a coach might employ here are reframing, again, that, kind of rephrasing what someone said, making sure you understand it and helping them understand it, clarifying, visioning, and recognizing when someone has a belief that's limiting their progress and helping them move around that, helping them get beyond that. And then action and accountability. So that, any coaching, every coaching session usually ends with some action that the client has agreed to take, and a level of accountability on the part of the client. And a sample skill here that a coach might use is a request, making a request of a client. Okay, so keep those in mind. And then we're about to move to our demo, and I wanted to just pull out a couple of really kind of baseline coaching skills. There are lots of coaching skills, and I think the more I know about coaching, the more I know it takes lots of learning and practice to be really, really a great coach. But everyone can do it, and it's exciting. But a couple things maybe to think about when you're watching the demo and then when you're doing the coaching yourself. First is this active listening. So there are 3 levels of listening. The first is internal listening. So where you're listening, but you're not really listening. Someone is saying, someone says to me, well, I got a cup of coffee this morning. And I say, great, I got a cup of coffee too. And my coffee was too hot, and then I got a bagel, and it's not really about them. It's about I'm listening, but I'm relating it to myself. Level 2 is focused listening, where I really am focusing on the other person. I'm really tuning myself out, and I'm listening to what they're saying. And a key skill here is self-management. So self-managing my own thoughts so that I can really focus on my client or my friend or whoever it is I'm talking to. And then the third one is this global listening. And in coaching, body language and intuition and sort of the feel of the room and what's happening is really important. So it's listening beyond. You're listening to what the person's saying, but you're also seeing how their body is. You're understanding the energy in the room and the energy that the client has. And this is really kind of the ultimate level of listening. And then, so that's listening. And a general rule of thumb that we use in coaching is that the client should be talking about 80% of the time, and you as the coach are maybe talking only 20% of the time. And then the other baseline coaching skill that we work on a lot are using powerful questions. So using questions that really open the client up, that encourage them to talk, that are from a point of curiosity. And some examples here. What questions are usually really great? What about that's important to you? And what else? What next? Why questions often tend to shut people down, and any question that has a yes or a no answer is not gonna be a powerful question. So really, these questions that allow people to really open up. So that is all I have on a very, very brief kind of coaching overview. And I'm going to ask my colleague Saul to do a demonstration. And what we're hoping that you all will do, if you look in front of you, you should have something called the Wheel of Life exercise. And the Wheel of Life shows several different areas of your life. I actually don't have one in front of me, but I think there's friends and family and health and your environment. And it asks you to rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and how you feel, 10 being the best. I feel great about this area of my life, in each of those areas. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do that. Try to look at each of those areas, the Wheel of Life, not the financial wheel yet, just the Wheel of Life. And rank yourself from a 1 to a 10 in each of those areas. And if you want, you can draw a line. If 10's the highest, I'm at the outer circle. If 9 is here, then I can kind of draw that line, and you can see how the lines connect and where you feel great about certain aspects of your life, and others where you think you could improve. And then we're going to use this for our coaching session. So as you're doing this, if anyone thinks that they'd like to come up and be coached on this, on an area where that they'd like to improve upon, or where they'd like to see their number higher, we'd love to invite you to volunteer.